Try as many of us did to resist it, the rise of mobile games has been an unstoppable force over the past 10 years. Be it Threes, Angry Birds, Desert Golfing or Fortnite, trillions of hours have been spent tapping away at our phone screens while on the morning commute, during a particularly boring meeting, or a longer than expected trip to the bathroom.
It wasn't long before we started to see versions of console and PC franchises make the transition to the tiny screen. Most of these came and went, but the odd one grabbed a mainstream audience and stood the test of time. Even so, the success of Fallout Shelter was something that neither Bethesda or the external studio that helped them create the game could ever have imagined. So in this documentary, we're going to explore not only the design of the game, but the business behind the pitch and the team's terrifying plan to announce it and launch it during E3 2015.
Little of the story of Fallout Shelter follows any sort of traditional video games development script. In fact, even the original concept for the game came from a pretty unlikely source.
So the iPhone comes out, 07, and we had a couple designs. Like, hey, we should do an iPhone game. We had a couple Fallout, we had at least 2 good Fallout designs, and Shelter was one of them. And we had been doing Fallout 3 and done this commercial. If you go back and look at the trailer for Fallout 3.
Okay, which one? The one that starts with the TV?
Yeah, go watch
the pull back from the, yeah, all right.
You'll know exactly when you see it. Okay. So it pulls back and it says, hey, life in the vault, and it pulls back and there's Fallout Shelter.
Right.
Talking about 2008. There's Fallout Shelter, because that was, hey, that would be, that right there, that's the game. We kind of let it sit. And we kept bringing it up like, hey, we should do an iPhone game, this would be really fun. You get a lot of pitches from other mobile companies. We'd be like, no, I have the pitch. And it's like a little computer people meets The Sims, meets Fallout, and you breed them and you can do experiments. You know. It's one of those games where like once you see the 10-second pitch, like it almost, like, I got it. And then we're like, well, if we do this, everyone wants Fallout 4. We can't do this mobile. Well, if we do, like people are like, what are you doing? So when Fallout 4 was coming around, I saw an opening to make it as a marketing vehicle. I just wanted to make the game. It's like, okay, can I get this budget approved as a marketing spend?
Someone else's budget.
Right, so then I don't have to go into like corporately getting a budget approved to say like, this is a real game that should make real money, that should have a P&L and all these things. Like, this is a marketing spend.
You know, Fallout Shelter for us was this, originally it was supposed to be a marketing exercise. Give people a taste of Fallout before they could get their hands on Fallout 4.
I remember originally actually somebody asked like because it was a marketing thing, so the budget was lower. It also, in a way, it was, people didn't pay $60 for it, so expectations were different. So that was a good thing in a way, but also, are they gonna like it? It's Fallout on your phone, Right. Don't turn my awesome franchise into a crappy mobile app. So we were very cognizant of that. But somebody asked the phrase of, how do you know if it's a success then? And somebody said, well, if we get 2 or 3 million downloads, I think that's successful. And I think it got that in the first 24 hours.
Bethesda Game Studios had never made a mobile game before, and so went looking for a partner in that space to help get the wheels spinning on their first project. One of the many studios that applied for this partnership was Behavior Interactive, a prolific work-for-hire studio in Montreal who'd been developing games under one name or another since 1992. Yves Lachance worked at Behavior for 10 years and oversaw the development of something between 50 and 100 games.
This is back to 2013, so we are, BGS is going out and asking for people, independent developers like Behavior, work-for-hire shops, to pitch a game, but they wouldn't say what brand, they wouldn't say what kind of game. They said, just pitch us. I go, pitch you on what?
Yeah, I think we gave them a really high level, sort of like, this is sort of our idea, and see what they came back with. But at the same time, we had this pretty specific idea of what we wanted, and they sort of synced up pretty well. Right. For us, we never made a mobile game, and largely Bethesda Game Studios, we've made our own games internally. We haven't really done much outside of it. We don't really, there's the Bethesda arm of the company which publishes other games, and then BGS, we make our own games. So we hadn't really worked with a lot of other studios. So it was the process of finding somebody who knows how to make mobile games and what's their ideas, and then merging the two.
So we start figuring out, okay, so it's been 7 years, or by then it was 6 years since Fallout had been out, 2 years after Skyrim. We imagined that it might be a fall game. So we start creating a pitch where we're listing all the reasons why they should work with us. But we do it on a side view. Each slide is a room in the vault. And as you're going down into the vault, you have a side view and information. Ends up afterward, the story is that it almost slide for slide looked like the internal pitch they had for Fallout Shelter.
When they told me what the license was, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, you're kidding me, right? We're not gonna make this. And then we came here actually for the first time. We met with the BGS people and we pitched the title. And everybody was super excited. I was stressed as hell, meeting all the people that made Skyrim. I was like, I can't believe I'm with those people in the room. And I work with them every day now, but at the time I was like, oh my God, this is crazy.
Behaviour worked with their development team in Chile on Shelter, while another part of the company worked on supporting the final months of development on Fallout 4. Bethesda Game Studios had never worked with an external partner and had an iterative, done-when-it's-done style of development. Whereas Behaviour, who were used to completing work-for-hire contracts to very strict deadlines, were used to a more structured, milestone-led style of work. So it took some learning for both teams to adapt to each other.
What matters is how the game feels, which is totally different from any other games that I've made before, where before it was like, okay, this is what you have to do, somebody has an idea, this is what we're doing, and you execute the plan. Where now it's like, oh, we have a vision, this could be fun. And then we try it, and then we make the project evolve onto it until it is actually fun. And that was a totally different approach for somebody that was an outsider from these people who have been doing this for 20 years.
BGS were the lore masters when it came to Fallout, but ultimately the design of Shelter was a collaboration. I asked Vero what were some of the elements they decided to take from that original poster, and how did they decide what flavors of the Fallout universe would make it into Shelter.
What is the most iconic things from Fallout 3 that people would like to hear again and make them remember cute moments like Mr. Andy and other things that we brought back. When we applied this, we wanted to still give it a feel, so we had a mix of 3D, because all the rooms, they were made in 3D, but the characters were kind of 2D puppets made of this. The team we were working with in Chile, they were amazing on this. These people were super passionate and they were really into it. And they were able to break down these characters and create an animation system that was able to make them move lifelike around the whole vault. The balance of the game, everything is fine-tuned to work perfectly so that you're missing water at the right moment, you're missing electricity at the right moment. But that took a massive amount of time to get the right feel and the right balance. But 2 months before the E3 release, we were all like, how are we gonna make this work?
Any builder game like that, like other builder games you've done, you don't really see it until all the rooms, all the economy works well. So that was creating all these rooms and adding and really tuning it to a point where the simulation started being fun. And that took a while.
There's a limit of 200 dweller in the game because past that point, most devices, won't be able to handle that many variety of room. There was a massive optimization that was done, just before we launched at E3 because we weren't sure people were going to reach that 200, dweller level.
If you trace it back to before the launch of Fallout Shelter, one of the things that a lot of mobile games are doing was timer monetization. So you would do complete building now, and you'd pay currency to do that. It was clear that we did not want to do that. But there was reason to have elegant timers that are not so intrusive and not so aggressive, but it was really, let's do it later on when there are things that are not about the building the vault, but about other secondary goals that you want to achieve. The tone of Fallout Shelter was never to be about strong classical monetization. So it was very important when we put it in that it respected that tone.
The game they designed would be based around three main resources: food, water and power. The game would be a balancing act between increasing the efficiency of production while making sure that dwellers would be able to sustain the ever-growing population. And just like that original vision for the game seen in the launch trailer for Fallout 3, making babies would be an important part of growing your vault. On paper, the idea was that you'd simply drop 2 vault dwellers in the living quarters and eventually nature would take its course. But in practice, having a bunch of the same family members running around the vault together created plenty of opportunities for, well...
Oh yeah, because we couldn't let this... That was actually the first time I had to have this kind of conversation with a coworker. That was a really not comfortable moment where you're like, yeah, you know, you name these people, they are brothers, sisters, or parents or grandparents. Like, how are we gonna prevent this from actually like happening? So it was the second time actually I lived this situation, because I made like a zoo game before, and we had the same kind of problem with like breeding animals with like their parents, and we came up with like I don't remember the number of iteration we keep, you know, like how deep the family remembers you're from.
Right.
But it's long enough so that, you know, like it shouldn't alter your DNA.
Right. So second cousins might happen.
Slight, you know, mutation, but like not enough to be noticeable. So
Right,
it's acceptable.
Excellent.
As the months went by and the game continued to evolve, plans for the launch of the game began to materialize. Though this game was much more than a simple marketing app, the team still wanted to release it a few months before the launch of Fallout 4. In fact, Todd had the idea of announcing the game and setting it live during the premiere Bethesda showcase at E3 2015.
6 months before E3, we had a back end, and we started having a conversation about what the launch is going to be, and it says no soft launching. I was like, what? Remember, at Behavior we had done dozens of mobile games before, and you do a soft launch, you test that everything works fine, and it's just like MMOs. So no soft launching. At that point, still the monetization, the lunch boxes were not very well defined. So we were just like, okay, we gotta figure out the last leg of monetization, and we gotta harden the back end, because we're gonna be launching pretty hard. So no, we're not gonna ripping out the back end. Because we're not soft launching. We're announcing it live. And back in those days, the idea that you could say it's available now, and then it was unheard of.
Right.
Apple would typically release on a fixed schedule the apps. So folks at Apple, they really like Fallout. This is like, we'll do this. On Sunday night, we're gonna make the game available for download. So we rip out the back end, and we are making the monetization very low-key on purpose, so that we didn't have, because if you don't have, and in the soft launch, it's when you tweak whether you have the right level of monetization and so on, so we have none of that.
And that was a game, you talked about keeping things secret, that everyone was walking around with it on their phones, everyone was playing it, like, we're gonna release this that night. Like, can we keep this under wraps? That's particularly hard, because there's a lot of people involved, you know, externally too.
But Fallout Shelter didn't leak, and a few short months later the team was ready to launch. On that night, Todd took to the stage to announce Fallout 4, and in between gameplay demos for their new open world game, right after showing the new playable Pip-Boy app, Todd did the big reveal.
We've also done something else for your smartphone and your tablets. A totally new game. Back in 2007, we were making Fallout 3 and the iPhone came out, and we just fell in love with it. And we played games on it all the time. And we kept talking about making our own game for it, a separate game from what we would usually normally do. We had a lot of ideas. We kept coming back to this one that we felt would be perfect on a touch screen, and that would be no better anywhere else. So we decided to do it, and here it is. It is called Fallout Shelter, and in it, you get to make your own vault. And you are the overseer controlling everything. You control the people in the vault. It's your job to keep them productive and happy. This is inspired by games, the other games we love, going back 30 years to little computer people. You'll see inspirations obviously from XCOM, SimCity, FTL, things that we really like. Accidents can happen, fires can break out, rat roach attacks, raiders can attack. And of course, the best way to get new dwellers is the old-fashioned way. That raises their happiness when they go in the room. And of course, as overseer, you get to name all the babies. And that is Fallout Shelter. What's even more exciting is that this game is coming out on the App Store tonight.
When it was available to download, it crashed the CDN of Apple.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A lot of retries in the first 24 hours had nothing to do with anyone but Apple because there were so many demands.
When I started seeing the number go up, because I had live analytics that I was watching, and I had the people at the office like screaming at me like, send us the number, send us the number. So I was like quickly gathering everything together and sending this to them, and they were freaking out.
And that level of, we like the game, you're like, this will be cool, it'll be something people to touch. But the level of success was, it was never in your wildest imagination. I would say that is probably, even despite our successes with Fallout, Skyrim, and all that stuff, that was probably the biggest gap from expectation to, it's number one in the App Store and you're outgrossing Candy Crush on your first day. Like, what?
Do you remember after, like Yves said, like after a week it was about 10 million, I think he said, after the first week or so. Do you remember what the first day was? Or?
The first day was 5 million.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The first 48 hours was 5 million. The first 24 hours around 2 point something.
Wow.
Only iOS, yeah.
Yeah. So equal parts joy and panic?
Yes.
We didn't have a long-term plan at that point. It was so different when it released and made so much noise. Then the fact that it was going to be there for a while sort of dawned on us at that point.
Oh, what do? We got to update the game. We had like, you're like, oh boy. So then it's like success is a little bit like, okay, we need to update the game, we need to add all these things we know we didn't do, and we knew what the game was. We knew when people were going to burn through the content, which they did pretty much faster than we anticipated. So we were playing a bit of catch up. But we've learned a lot since then. And it wasn't until once the numbers you realize you're about to hit, hey, we're going to be at 100 million players, or now we're at 120 million players. And you like, that's more people than have played every game we've made combined. Then you do look at it differently.
This breakthrough success for Fallout Shelter had a knock-on effect in terms of how the two companies would work together. By the time Behaviour had finished Shelter and their work on Fallout 4, they had a team of around 55 working entirely on Bethesda games. BGS in Maryland had formed a good working relationship with this group, and so negotiations started around forming a full-time external group in Montreal. The end result of this was Bethesda Game Studios Montreal, and the first 40 people through the door were Behaviour Interactive employees. They got to work quickly, adding characters, items, and quests to a game that was suddenly being played by tens of millions of people around the world, many of whom had never even heard of Fallout before.
We made sure that there was new characters. We really turned this into a live service kind of game where there was events, links to like holidays and special things for the launch of the Fallout 4 game, and we were trying to make it as alive as the game kind of feel.
By removing the back end, one of the things that we lost is the ability to visit other people's vault. So at the beginning it was, let's see if we can visit each other's vault and I can trade, attack, or explore your vault. So that we had to remove. So how can we use the vault system to create story elements that are interesting? Because it's very modular and then you're just adding more rooms into a location. The initial concept of going out the vault was a very basic, here's a log of what the dwellers saw outside. But that was fun, but not really satisfying as much than if you send the dwellers to, especially in the party, to a location to do something.
Yeah, Quest is like something that we were like, okay, some people are gonna reach a level where, you know, they have all the rooms. So what else is in the Fallout universe? And exploring is one thing that was massively missing from the game. So we came up like, how do we do Quest? How do we have people go outside of that vault? We kind of reversed the vault. Like the vault was underground. Now we reversed this and we created like an upward kind of building using the same kind of system with the room. And that's what we used to make the Quest.
And with that, it was very much, we designed the game, it's like, here's the marketing, it's a marketing app, but it's a fun Fallout game, and this is what it does, and put it out there. And then it was like, okay, this is obviously something people like, we should do more. And so we had a lot of ideas, some of them were bigger. So part of the Quest thing was, it was a big, we wanted to give something substantial, like you said, more to do with the vault, the supplies you're creating and stuff, and also more content to keep them playing, like give them more substance basically. So it was like, how do we fit that into the game that was actually designed just to be a small vault simulator?
Fallout Shelter is an interesting story. That as soon as we do any kind of promotion, as soon as we do releases, players just jump over them. And it's very, very easy for more players to join or come back to it. So much so that one of the challenges we had is Bethesda didn't have a strong mobile infrastructure. We're the only internal team at the time that was doing mobile games. So we were trying to create that other game from that other franchise. But every time we sneezed on Fallout Shelter, there was something else that was, people couldn't stop playing Shelter, and everything we put in, they would really eat up. So transitioning from Fallout Shelter to the next game was particularly challenging.
Bethesda Game Studios Montreal would eventually get to work on that new game, which, just like Fallout Shelter, stemmed from an idea that came from the team in Maryland.
Where did the idea, the impetus for Blades come from?
So I said we had multiple designs, that was the other one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like, okay, really nice to play dungeon hack. If you go back to Arena, it is a procedural dungeon hack. It's a glorious, giant dungeon hack game. And so it was, I still like those experiences. And okay, how can we translate that to a phone or a mobile device and make it unique to it, right? So I think the input mechanism is really important to those kind of things. While it has all these other parts that we'd won, but it really started as a dungeon experience, and then Blades grew and grew and grew and grew, like everything else, kind of around that nugget.
Fallout Shelter is available on most phones, as well as the PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and of course, the Nintendo Switch. To watch our final documentary from our time at Bethesda Game Studios, make sure you hit that subscribe button as we look to their latest adventure in mobile games development, The Elder Scrolls Blades. See you then.